Hi, everybody, and welcome into another edition of the Take the North podcast, along with Dan Wiederer of the Chicago Tribune. I am Mark Grote of Chicago Sports Radio 670 The Score. Dan and I cover the Bears virtually every day of our lives. As a matter of fact, coming up on Sunday will be the Family Fest at Soldier Field. So Dan and I are looking forward to covering that practice. We've got a ton to talk about on this podcast. We have some great sound that we're going to play for you here in just a little bit, including Ben Johnson and Luther Burden and Braxton Jones. We are certainly going to talk about Micah Parsons as well, because he apparently wants out of Dallas, and maybe the Bears would be in on something like that. But those are the things that we're going to talk about here and much more on our podcast as we bring in our guy, Dan Wiederer. Weedsy, what's going on, my brother?
How we doing, Grody? What a fabulous little bridge here we're building from week 2 to week 3 of Bears training camp, and trying to get ourselves aligned for August. August, baby, we're in August.
Oh my God, rent's due. Holy cow. Today is August after I get off the air here. Yes, payments need to be made. That is for sure. We're also going to talk about, by the way, a couple things towards the end of the podcast that you'll want to stick around for sure, is that Dan and I both have something on Caleb Williams that we'd like to share with you, some content that you probably will be very interested in as it regards to the Bears quarterback one. And we're going to both talk about the Cubs for a Cure Radiothon towards the end of this podcast as well, which went very well. But Dan, I do want to start with the superstar in Dallas and Micah Parsons. There are probably 25 to 30 teams in the NFL who have taken note of the displeasure that apparently Micah Parsons is feeling in Dallas, one of the best defensive players in the NFL right now.
Always amusing when something like this comes up to see the instant reaction from the fan base of the team that you follow. In this case, the Chicago Bears. Everybody thinks that Micah Parsons should be a Bear by Sunday morning, right? Like that's the request. That's the urge. And I think you have to take a step back and try to figure out what all this looks like. Number one, why would Micah Parsons make sense? Well, he's an unbelievable talent, a double-digit sack guy, unbelievable dynamic defensive weapon. Why might he not make sense? Okay, well, here's a handful of reasons that people need to wrap their brains around as we get through the weekend. Number one, Dallas has no obligation to grant his request for a trade, right? I think that there is some sentiment out of Dallas that they will try to get him back to the negotiating table, try to mend fences and keep him as part of their plans going forward, because they don't want to lose a guy of that caliber. Number two, the Bears have a defense right now under Dennis Allen that's a 4-3 system. Parsons is more of a 3-4 fit, and you say, okay, well, you can be flexible with players of this caliber to, change things up. Well, we're, 4 weeks from the regular season, and it's a little bit more difficult. Like Khalil Mack was a guy that was scheme versatile, right? And I think that's what everybody points to immediately. Like let's just repeat 2018. Let's get a premier dynamic pass rusher on the eve of the season, and let's go relive that entire glory season where you win a division championship and really make some waves. The other part of this is that I don't know what the Bears would have to give up either in draft capital or current players. I don't know what they would have to pay Micah Parsons to make this work with a salary cap that right now is pretty limited. They've got a lot of money invested in Montez Sweat. They paid a lot of money to Dio Dangbo to rush the passer. And so there's just a lot of things, a lot of cloudy things that don't make this as easy as the folks on social media want to think, that you just say, oh, Micah wants a trade, we'll trade for him today.
I mostly agree with you. Like, I don't think this is a possibility. And I'll add again, I know I've said this before on this podcast, that I don't think the Bears will start doing things like that until year 2 of Ben Johnson and this marriage between Ben Johnson and Ryan Poles. I feel like I'm not ruling it out. Trust me. And you're right. We saw the blockbuster deal be made in 2018 out of nowhere. And then the Bears went on to have an elite defense. I mean, I think it's fair to attach that adjective to at least that season. It was elite. So I'm not ruling it out. I've just had this feeling like, well, nobody's going to, I mean, this is not, obviously we're not in the midst of a rebuild, but it is a restructuring. And I think that those types of things will start to happen maybe next year, the year after that as well, where the Bears start to use the money and the assets, whatever they may be, to make those blockbuster type of moves.
And again, the Cowboys are still in control of the entire situation, as much as they've really kind of gotten egg on their face and been very sloppy with handling one of their star playmakers. They still have no obligation to get rid of a guy under contract, and so this is going to be an interesting situation to monitor throughout the month of August. I never rule any of these things out anymore because I definitely was skeptical that the Bears could pull something off for Mac. And then lo and behold, he was on,
it happened. Yeah.
Sunday Night Football in Green Bay, making complete, just making a huge splash and really changing the trajectory of that season. So who knows where this goes, but at least worth addressing out of the gate some of the chatter that mushrooms really quickly in this day and age when something like this comes up.
Yep, and that was a move made by Ryan Poles' predecessor, Ryan Pace, and I feel like Poles could probably use a win right now, even though he was the most popular man in the building last year at about this time. So we shall see. We shall see. Can't rule out the possibility, but honestly, I've mostly ruled out the possibility. Dan, why don't we do sort of an improvised version of Listen to This, which is a regular segment on the Take the North podcast where usually Dan and I and Studs will go back and forth with the best audio of the week or things that piqued our interest or maybe something that wasn't heard or needed to be analyzed further. And I know, Dan, that you have, because I was part of this big Cubs for a Cure Radiothon, which we're going to talk about. I have been bound to the studio as of late. So we are going to allow you, and so was our executive producer, Adam Stadzinski. This guy just did like 10 hours worth of overnight radio. So we're kind of depending on you, Dan, for this Listen to This segment. I know you've selected some pretty good cuts, it looks like, that you and I can listen to and react to.
It was a busy and eventful day on Thursday at Haugh and a busy and eventful practice. We're not going to get too far into the weeds of that practice, but that was their longest and most intense practice to date. And there was a lot of things going on, and you kind of just wish that they could have more of those per week. We've talked several times over the last couple of weeks about the CBA restrictions on how much you're allowed to practice, and it's been a little bit uneventful. Well, Thursday was eventful on the field with some of the things we saw, and then off the field with some of the things we heard. I'm going to start you here before Thursday's practice with a little cut from Ben Johnson addressing the status of the Bears' number one corner. And I've got a couple different roads to take this one down. But let's just start right away with the audio. The first question from Ben Johnson's Thursday morning press conference.
What's the best case scenario for Jaylon Johnson and when you think he might be able to be back out?
I think there's a scenario where he'll be ready for week one. And that's really the target date. I know he's working hard and diligently to get there for that. And with those types of injuries that he's got, you just never know. You never know. So it's still early in that process, but I know he's attacking that rehab really well.
So, Grote, I'll start with you right there. When you heard the question about best case scenario and you heard the answer from Ben Johnson, what was your reaction? Because I'll share mine after you.
I think it's a pretty obvious one. It's like there's a scenario where he's ready for week one. What was all that? He's fine. He'll be back in a few weeks. Talk that we were hearing a few weeks ago or whatever it was.
Right. And the specific words from the general manager were, we're not overly concerned. And like Jaylon will be his full self when he gets back out on the field. And now you're asking for a best case scenario. And Ben's kind of like, oh, we could see a chance where he might play on week one against the Vikings. I was startled by that. And I know it kind of instantly made waves on social media as some of the other reporters in the room tweeted that out quickly, because now you're preparing to go into a big division game on Monday Night Football without Jaylon Johnson against a receiving core that features Justin Jefferson. And now you're going to have to probably try to make do with that. It sounds like that's what they're planning for, from if you're reading between the lines of what Ben Johnson said there. And if he does happen to find the path to the scenario where he can be ready for week one, well, now you can change plans and change them for the better. But boy, this raises a lot of questions. And one of the questions is, what the heck is happening here? Mm-hmm. What is this leg injury that Jaylon Johnson has? How did it occur? Why is it going to keep him out for the length of time that it's going to keep him out? Why have we not seen him beside the practice field? The second part of this conversation for me, Grote, and I think this is me channeling my inner Ben Johnson here as sort of a constructive plea to the room that we sit in so often. Why did we quickly transition to the offensive tackle competition? Like that answer from Ben Johnson required some follow-up discussion.
Yeah.
I think we've gotten in this situation recently in that room, and this is just me venting for a minute of like, hey, there's got to be a flow to these things. There's got to be some alertness when something comes up to be like, well, let's suspend some of the other topics we were going to get to. Let's stay on this for a minute and figure out if we can get the head coach to explain a little bit more of this. Never got back around to it. And
really,
it startled me a little bit. Jesus. That we never got back to anything on Jaylon Johnson after the coach dropped a little bit of what I would say is a little bit of a bomb there on
Wow,
Thursday
bad
morning.
job by our room then. That's not good work by us.
This is a championship standard we've got to uphold in there, right?
I mean, usually there is a flow. Usually there is a pretty good flow in there. And I've had plenty, and it's hard because sometimes you got a question that you really want answered, and that's all you're thinking about in there, and you're not listening to what's going on in the flow. So I probably have been guilty of that before, but yeah, you gotta something like that. Like that's your best player on defense. That's your best defensive player, right?
Right. And he might not be ready for the season opener after they told us don't worry, right? And like you heard me on reporting day saying, well, I'm going to worry until they give me reason not to worry. And now you've got even more reason to worry and go, well, what is this? What exactly is happening here? It requires some behind the scenes reporting. It requires some center stage reporting. We'll stay on it. Certainly, but I felt like a little bit of a missed opportunity by us collectively in that room to not pry for the head coach to give more answers, and maybe Ben can provide a little bit more on Sunday at Family Fest. But that's a pretty rushed session with the coach as well, and so we may be waiting a little while before we get more formal word on Jaylon's availability.
Is the injury more severe, Ben, than you thought it was? Because that's not the way you guys were talking earlier on.
What is it, and how did it happen? Like this, there's just too much mystery to this situation. I didn't like the smell of it from the minute that it came out, like when they put him on NFI 2 days before the reporting date, when the rookies checked into camp. And I like it even less now because there's such a absence of answers in this situation.
Yeah, they're hiding him. I mean, they have told us that he's in the build. Have you seen him, Dan? I know in the practices I've been there, I've not laid any, not seen him in the back hallways or anything. Like sometimes when they troop us through, did not see him on any of the fields out there. So I don't really like that part either. I mean, we're not entitled to see players, but I mean, just give us a signal or a symbol. But I guess this is status quo for the way NFL teams and the Bears comport themselves, especially at this time of the year, I guess.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see where this goes. I will say that one of the surprises that I've had during camp and really even dating back to the spring is Nahshon Wright has held out his own out there on the football field. You haven't noticed him and been like, man, this guy is getting torched by some of these really good Bears receivers. He's been pretty good. And so hopefully they've got a little bit of a comfort zone there. And by the way, Nahshon Wright spent last season on the practice squad of the Vikings. So he's had his experience going against Justin Jefferson.
That's great.
He may have some intel that can help him in what would be obviously a real challenge.
Big 6'4" Nahshon Wright. What else did Ben have to say? Anything on Caleb?
Yeah. So you and I have been talking now for months about the growing relationship between the two of these guys and how it really needs to just stay healthy and stay productive as they go through these, roller coaster days of training camp. Good day, bad period, bad throw, mistake here, flash here, all those things. Ben and Caleb seem like they are doing really well collectively navigating things. We heard from Caleb Williams earlier in the week. You and I addressed it on our last podcast where he was sort of just making a little bit of a plea for positive reinforcement and saying, look, like I'm all for being coached hard. When I do things right, I want to get a little pat on the back here and there. And so I kind of followed up with Ben just to get a feel for how he navigates that, how he presses the buttons with his quarterback, understanding that, yes, I want to be demanding. I want him to be detailed, but every once in a while I've got to, let him know I've got him a little bit. And so a little bit of a back and forth between Ben and I on that topic. We'll start right there.
You stay cognizant of being very demanding on him, being very hard on him, but then also pushing the right buttons so that he feels a little bit of that support throughout the long stretch of camp.
Yeah, it's I think the way he was raised was one that was pretty demanding. I don't think you become the number one recruit in the nation without being pushed to a certain degree. So he's used to that, and I think he likes it. We've had those conversations. He knows what's coming, and we're getting to the point now where I don't even have to say as much. He's as hard on himself as I'm being on him, and he's disappointed when we're not spitting the plays out in the huddle the way we should, or we're not taking the proper drop, or our eyes aren't in the right place. And so he's getting to that point where it's more self-correction, and we're off and running from there. So I'm really excited about where he's at mentally, though.
You feel like you have to give him occasional pats on the back just to keep him.
There's no question about it. Yeah. He came up to my office on that player day off, and we highlight what he's done well over those first 4 days and areas that he needs to improve for the next 4. And we'll do the same thing on Friday.
Friday being today, Grote, so you had another meeting at Haugh Hall today between the quarterback and the head coach of them trying to set the stage for the upcoming chunk of practices and reviewing the last 4. I do think that Ben has a communication style that's really, really direct, but in an engaging way. I think you hear it in that back and forth there where you say, okay, I can see how this would work with the quarterback, with a head coach who can really, really push and ask for more and be very demanding and detailed about everything, but still communicate in a way where the quarterback doesn't feel defensive, and doesn't feel like, oh man, I'm being attacked here. We're just trying to work to get better so that we can go chase these huge goals that we've both vocalized. And so I do think there's something here to just that communication and coaching style and the way those two are operating together.
Yeah, and I like the kind of the end of the day, as you said, the meeting that they're going to have today. We're going to sit down in the office and kind of reset, go through the good and the bad. And it's interesting that he says that Caleb Williams was raised in a demanding structure and all of that. And I'm sure he was, like with his father, Carl Williams, and this is what he wanted to be, a great quarterback from the time he was, 10 or 11 years old, and he's hard on himself and all that. But I still don't think he probably hasn't seen anything as demanding in his life to what he's seeing right now with this offense and this head coach and this structure.
Yeah, and Ben did a sit down with Cassie Carlson, our good friend from Fox 32, recently as well, and he said something to the effect that he's just reiterating things that we've heard previously about just reinforcing the commitment level required to be a top tier quarterback in the NFL, right? And it's just massive, and every day that has to be a reminder that like there are no days off. There are no days where you can just kind of be complacent and go through the motions and not be in your playbook and not be preparing for the next day. And so all of this is just like, hey, we got to go. This is a race, as Ben told us, and we've got to go hard in order to reach the starting gate of the regular season with momentum that allows us to be competitive during the season. And so a lot here between the quarterback and the head coach and a lot more ahead for both of them. I do think they both have shown an acknowledgement of the mountain that they're trying to climb. And now it's just about kind of doing it together.
Luther Burden has been he has made a name for himself. For better or for worse, it feels like the waves of Luther Burden have been amazing, Dan.
Yeah, and so Thursday we talked about that being a very competitive and active practice at Haugh Hall. Luther Burden flashed. There's no question about it. Before the practice, Ben Johnson said, look, like we're still working with him on some of the mental stuff. He hasn't been on the field a lot, so the alignments and the misalignments are things we've got to address. But he was really impressed with Luther Burden's play speed. And then you get out there on Thursday morning and you see some of the plays he's making. He catches a deep ball down the right sideline during one-on-ones or down the left sideline, during one-on-ones. And you're like, okay, there's some sizzle there. We're in 11-11 period. He's running with the twos at one point, and Tyson Bagent hits him with back-to-back play action completions where you see him run crisp routes, get to the spot he's supposed to be and catch the ball. And so every one of those flashes for Luther Burden, I think, is important with all the time that he missed. And so there is something here to a young rookie trying to catch up, trying to get on the same page with everybody that's around him, but also reminding them, hey, I thought I was a first-round talent. You guys felt lucky enough to get me in the second round. There's a reason for that because I'm very talented and I can be very explosive as a playmaker. And so some of those plays that Luther Burden made on during Thursday's practice, I think, left an impression. And so he talked a little bit about that after the practice.
Ben told you over the last several months about the types of things he thinks you can really do well in his offense.
I feel like I do everything in his offense. I mean, I'm just really, trying to, get my feet wet, get, situated on the field and, just learn my playbook really. And I feel like everything else take care of itself.
When you make some of the catches you made today, how does it build your confidence? Could you feel it growing when you were out there?
Yeah, it definitely builds confidence, not just me, with the coaches, the play caller, the quarterback, giving me the ball. And, everybody on the team, just seeing me go out there and make plays against, guys. And it was great.
I like that, Grote, from Luther, because it was an acknowledgement that it's not just about his confidence. It's about the confidence of the people around him, that the quarterback, the coaches, and the play callers have to have confidence in him for his role to grow, right? And the way to get the people around you to be more confident in you is to show them what you can do. And Luther Burden took a nice step forward on Thursday. I'm going to go back to what you called for before camp began: consistency. String them together, stack a bunch of practices like that together, and we'll say, okay, Luther Burden's ready for prime time, which is what the Bears are trying to do. In his absence, I think a lot of people have been impressed with how sharp Olamide Zaccheaus has been, running some of those routes and showing he's more than capable of being that third wide receiver for the Bears. They're obviously going to move some pieces around, but good day for Burden on Thursday. And then nice to talk to him and get a chance to pick his brain a little bit after the practice as well.
Good stuff from him. And yeah, it does feel like Zaccheaus is going to be one of those guys who's going to open eyes during the regular season. I'm not expecting him to get the most targets or anything like that, but he's going to make some, you could just see like from the first days of OTAs, like he has been very present and he feels like a veteran and a guy that we're not talking about a lot right now because there's so much other development that has to be had, but he does feel like a pretty important part. Who do you think, I don't know if I've asked you this yet, Dan, I apologize if I have, but you and I both speak on many different forums. So sometimes we conflate what we talk about on the score or talk about on the podcast. Who do you think will lead the Bears in targets this year, or who's going to be the Bears' best receiver this year, however you want to quantify it?
It's a great question. And you and I are noted conflators. For sure.
We are. We're voluminous in our conflating.
Without question. Yeah, another C word, conflate.
There it is.
We'll add that to culture.
Dangerous, bro.
That's a good question because it's going to be really interesting to see kind of what identity this offense takes. I think your natural inclination would be that DJ Moore would see the lion's share of the targets, but Rome Odunze has looked really good. They're going to want to involve the tight ends. If I have to pick one, I'm going to say DJ Moore for now will be the leader in targets, but I don't say that with firm conviction that's where the ball's going. And DJ may get it out of the backfield, just as much as he gets it as a receiver as well.
I think they probably ideally would want Rome Odunze to be that guy. You know what I mean? Like that might be what they have in their minds right now. If this season's going to go right and the future of the Bears is going to go right, Rome Odunze's got to be the top guy. But I do think it's still DJ Moore. I still think he is, without a doubt, quite frankly, your best pass catcher. And I'm even talking about the tight end. Who knows? Like Colston Loveland might be great. Like we just don't know. Same with Burden. But until then, it's in my mind, this is still DJ Moore's game. And look, it's going to get better. There was not good chemistry for the most part last year with DJ Moore or Caleb Williams, or a lot of the times the chemistry was not there. I think that improves this year, and I still think it's DJ Moore's team in terms of receptions.
It'll be fun to watch. I thought Ben was really good earlier in the week talking about Rome and saying, look, like he does fit that traditional X role in the offense. Yeah. So good outside the numbers, can create matchups that make you feel real comfortable out there. We saw a few in practice. He caught a couple balls on Thursday that were pretty good. And so this is where, when you start to feel a little bit anxious about the progress of the Bears offense, you remind yourself that, look, like they've got a lot of pieces to work with.
Yes.
And if Ben Johnson is all he was advertised to be, which the brochure has been backed up by results in Detroit, you say he's going to figure this out. Like he's going to know by the time, if not week 1, certainly by week 2 or week 3, who they are and who they need to be. And he'll adjust, to their limitations and their strengths. And having this number of offensive playmakers to work with has to be just super appealing. And I'm really looking forward to sort of the end of this month when that period of refining the offense and sort of crystallizing who you want to be starts to take shape.
Oh yeah, man. The separation of players, and eventually they'll start to be cuts and things like that as we narrow this thing down to 53. Another unanswered question still is left tackle. What's the latest on left tackle, Dan? And do we have a little bit of listen to this from the left tackle position that we can discuss?
We got the incumbent starter at left tackle to join listen to this on
Braxton?
This beautiful day.
You got Braxton?
Braxton Jones.
Braxton.
So Braxton, we heard from Braxton on Thursday. We heard from all 3 left tackle competitors. So that's Braxton Jones, Ozzie Trapillo, and Karan Amagaji. Braxton was the most notable to me because it was the first time we had talked to him since he suffered that really severe ankle fracture in December against the Lions, required surgery, put him through a grueling recovery and rehab process. And he kind of cut open a vein a little bit on Thursday, just talking about the ways he was challenged through injury that was as serious as anything he's ever been through before physically. And so listening to Braxton talk about the early stages of the rehab process, talking about the current stages of the rehab and competition and trying to balance those 2 things at once. Like you're trying to get confidence that you're able to play physically at the level you're comfortable with. At the same time, you are trying to take every single day with a level of urgency that allows you to win a starting job. So we'll listen to a few things that Braxton's had to say about all those topics, and then we'll share a little bit more about the things that were on his mind recently.
Patience, how is that going with a competition to be the starting left tackle? You walk into something now with you and Karan and Ozzie. Like, what's that been like?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, for me, I just am trying to focus on myself, to be honest, and do what I can to help the other guys as well, and constantly learning. I use this phrase: when you're green you grow, and when you're ripe you rot. And that's big for me. Like, I'm always constantly trying to learn, and the patience has just come along that I have to focus on getting my ankle right before I can focus on anything else and feeling right. And then just in these last couple of days, it's been coming along, and I've gotten just to see that light at the end of the tunnel that, I could still do the things that I want to do. And I knew I could, but I mean, like at the beginning, when something like that happens and you're starting to go, you're starting to run and do all those things, it's like, man, like, come on now, like, let's go. When you're such a competitive nature, like, you just want to go. But like I said, that patience had to come in, and just with the competitive nature too, that's why I'm using that, as just to be, try and learn new things from those guys, learn anything I can, and just, constantly be trying to, soak everything up.
Braxton's such an interesting character in this whole saga, Grote, for a number of reasons. Number one, like, since the day he got here, he's just done things the right way, right? It's why you go from a late day 3 draft pick into a guy who can start 40 plus games in his first 3 years in the league. Now he's entering a contract year. He's suddenly, at the end of his rookie deal, and now coming back off a serious injury, stuck in a 3-man competition for a starting job, trying to fight for every piece of the pie that he can get in that regard, while also having to be patient with himself physically. I think you could hear, Grote, right? Like in that soundbite, the mental journey that he's been on, and trying to balance patience and persistence and all that stuff. You can tell that Braxton's been through some things since we last talked to him in December.
Oh yeah, man. And it's good to hear from him. And it has been, what a wild career. Not just what he's going through right now, but just a wild NFL career, and really a good for him. Like, if I'm Braxton Jones, man, I'm like, I'm having a hell of a career here. A 5th round pick out of a small school, and he comes in on day one eventually. Well, maybe not day one, but his rookie year, he's the left tackle, but it's easy pickings for everybody now because he's not a great left tackle.
Right.
He's a serviceable left tackle, but in a Ben Johnson offense, you probably want more than serviceable. And I still say that it's, this is just my guess, and I know that you and I kind of disagree. I still think if he's 100% or he's physically able, I still think it's Braxton Jones on day one. Not that Trapillo can't eventually take that spot. I've just from the beginning, I haven't felt great about him stepping in there on day one of year 2 of Caleb Williams.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna push back vehemently on that. I think Braxton's path to the starting job is to lean on the experience that he's gained over the first 3 years in the league. He's got an advantage on the other 2 in that regard, and it should help him. He should be able to do that in a way where maybe it gives the coaching staff a little bit more, mental security going into a season opener, understanding this guy's done it, and we don't have to guess about it like we would with Karan or Ozzie. I think one thing that's interesting, and I give Mully a lot of credit for this, because when this coaching staff came in and put on the film of Braxton Jones, the first thing they said is, we want him to put on some more weight so that he can anchor better against those bull rushes. And we really need him to get stronger and heavier to do so. And then the immediate response was, well, in the short term, he's actually got to lose weight so that he can handle his ankle recovery in the way that's, healthy. And so Braxton talked about that on Thursday as well. Like, look, I had to lose weight to take pressure off my ankle as I'm rehabbing it. Now I got to try to get back up to a target weight of 310. He's still a little bit below there, but you talk about just kind of that tug of war between trying to figure out what's the right thing to do and when's the right time to do it. This guy's he's had some challenges here.
Yeah. I mean,
he last played.
When you really put it like that, he may not be ready for, I think he will be, but they've been pretty ambiguous about it. And that's probably about as enlightening of a thing as we've heard about. God, losing weight to keep the pressure off and then having to put it back on. That's a lot to ask. So it might be a lot to ask Braxton Jones to
Yeah.
step in and be the starting left tackle. I think it's a lot to ask Ozzie Trapillo to do
Yeah.
it. So that said, it's going to be Karan Amagai, starting left tackle for the Chicago Bears.
There you go. He's a local boy. He's from Hinsdale.
That's
He'll
right.
do the job.
He went to Yale. He's very smart. He can pick it up.
So we got our answer. We found our way through that whole patch, and we found our answer at left tackle. It's Karan Amagai.
That was beautiful. We got a couple things on Caleb Williams. Dan, we are on the Score at noon on Monday. We will be having Caleb Williams as a guest. Layla Rahimi, Marshall Harris, and I will get to pick the brain of QB1 noon on the Score. And I understand that you might just be getting some time with Caleb Williams as well in the Chicago Tribune.
That's expected. You never count your chickens until they are until they're hatched. But yeah,
we are scheduled. That's why I say we are scheduled to speak to Caleb Williams. No, I think he'll be there.
Dates back to the Mitch Trubisky era, but typically I'll get a sit down with QE1 at some time in August, and it's come a little earlier with Caleb this year than it has in the past with Caleb and others. But looking forward to sitting down with him because listen, he's been super engaging. Every time he's been with us, he's going through a lot right now with the changeover in coaching staffs and all that he's being asked to do. It'll be fun to kind of pick his brain on where he's at right now. And so that'll be something that will feature in the ChicagoTribune.com at some point next week. Publication date TBD right now, but it will certainly marry up with probably some of the things that you talk about on Monday, and we'll have a ton to talk about. I feel like, Grote, we're at this stage of the year where, you have to just lop off really valuable discussion topics because we just don't have enough time to get to them all. And you're like,
I know.
I want to go through this whole menu and talk about it's 75 things, but we got to pick the top 4.
Right. What I was thinking, I'm already thinking in my head, what do I want to ask Caleb Williams on Monday? I'm thinking, no, I don't know. We got 2 more practices before, and you and I are both going to be out there on Sunday for.
I will not be. Just
you will not be.
A little bit. We're going to get a scheduled rest day for.
Good for you. Okay, I'll do the work, Dan. I got you, buddy.
You and Big Z got my back. It's great to have teammates like you.
Amen, brother. So Family Fest is Sunday, and I was just kind of thinking off the top of my head right before we came on the air that there's been some interesting, significant occurrences at Family Fest throughout the years, one of which was that strongly worded letter written by Roquan Smith a couple of years in Ryan Poles' first year? I think it was Ryan Poles' first year where he wrote that letter, to basically kissing up to Chicago fans and the great linebackers and the Bears organization. And if I'm not mistaken, did Ryan Poles, he did talk that day, didn't he?
He did, because I think basically Roquan gave that letter to Ian Rappaport, or somebody in Roquan's camp gave it to Ian Rappaport, and it just came out the morning of Family Fest. And then all of a sudden Roquan's just standing there on the sideline. And you're like, wait a second, you just kind of dropped a bomb on the franchise, and now you're just hanging out watching the Family Fest practice. And so Ryan was obligated to address that after that practice. Another one of those moments that you don't forget.
No, and I think that it was also at a Family Fest in Tevin Jenkins's rookie year where he was out, and we're getting these sort of vague reports. And I think it was at Family Fest where they eventually said that Tevin Jenkins, or it was either then or shortly thereafter, that we learned that Tevin Jenkins was going to need surgery after hearing he's going to be fine from Matt Nagy all the time.
It was one of those, it's no big deal, until it was like,
it's a big deal.
And then
right.
It's like, how did we get here so fast? That was
people wonder why we are sort of jaded in that regard. I always use jaded. I don't even know if that's the right word, but it's like we hear stuff from the Bears and the NFL, and then it's completely the opposite. The prognosis, the time missed is different, and we're dealing with that with Jaylon Johnson right now. What they said 2 weeks ago is very different from what they're saying about Jaylon Johnson right now, and that's why we're here.
No question about it.
Ask
those
questions.
2 other Family Fest notes.
Yes.
There was a year, I wish I had all the details in front of me, where Hronis Grasu suffered a terrible knee injury. I believe it was an ACL tear toward the end of the Family Fest practice, and it threw the entire Bears preseason up into upheaval because they thought he was going to be the starting center, and then they had to readjust. I can't remember who it would have been at that point that would have had to jump in and be the next man up in that situation. But that's one of those ones you just cross your fingers, get to the end of the practice, hear that final air horn, and get everybody on the bus healthy. And it didn't happen that year, and it was like, oh God, this is no good. You won't remember this because it's before your time on the beat, but Martellus Bennett wrote a children's animated movie called Zuvi, and he premiered it at the end of the Family Fest practice at Soldier Field. I wonder if that's available on YouTube somewhere, or if you can find it somewhere. But it was that was one of the more interesting things that ever happened out there as well. It's like Bears practice ended, and then you've got this like kids snarky cartoon movie written by the tight end.
It's pretty amazing. Like the dimensions to which Martellus Bennett goes. He's writing children's books and kicking the crap out of Kyle Fuller. I mean, choose your end of the spectrum for Martellus.
All
Were
over
you
the
there
map.
for that
Yeah,
fight? Were you there for when he beat up Kyle Fuller?
Oh yeah,
that was ugly, man. I think that one got caught on film too, didn't it? Or
that was back in the day where like almost everything was on the table. Like you could record, fans were in the stands taking videos. I don't remember if that was a fan practice or not, but I know I think Martellus was suspended from practice for a few
he
days
was.
by Phil Emery. And it was that was part of the spectacle that started 2014, which that was like by the end of the year, that was like the 11th weirdest thing that had happened in the entire season.
I like the idea of that conversation too, Martellus. You can't be beating up our starting cornerback. You just can't. You just can't do it. I mean, look, you're a lot bigger. You just can't. You can't be body slamming Kyle Fuller, who went on to be an All-Pro for the Chicago Bears. So yeah, Family Fest on Sunday. And lastly, we could bring in our executive producer, Adam Studzinski, because he was a big part of what went on at the Score over the last 24 hours. We had our Cubs for a Cure radiothon driven by Danny Parkins and the Chicago Cubs, the efforts that Danny and the Chicago Cubs and a bunch of our producers at the Score, including Adam Studzinski, the work that they did was amazing. And I was lucky enough and privileged, honestly, and flattered to be part of it and be on the air for 6 hours last night with Parco. But Dan, the Cubs for a Cure radiothon and Studs raised, this is right from Parco, actually, $750,000, $660. Oh God, $750,000, 660. God, why can't I say that? Why am I struggling?
$660,000. Yeah.
$750,660.
Over $750,000. God,
that's hilarious. That's hilarious.
You suck too. What is this? The Rosenblum show? We can't.
At least Studs has an excuse. He barely slept.
Yeah, he only got 3 hours of sleep. But thank you to all the businesses that donated. Thank you to the Score listeners and all who donated and everybody who was a part of it. Dan, it was a huge success.
Cool to see, and it really, really strong cause. And I definitely have, attachment to cancer stories with my father, with Jeff Dickerson, a few years ago, back to back. And you're so thankful at the number of people that understand the fight and have, you appreciate how many have had to do it, and then to see the volume of support and donation and all the things that came out through 24 hours. And Studs, you were on the air for 12 of them, right? Like you were grinding.
12.
Yeah, well, not on the air per se, but I was producing producing for the last 12 hours. So from Robbie Triano, who did a great job filling in for me. Yeah, shout out to the tree. He did the first 12 hours, basically being Parkins' right-hand man. And then I did the second 12 hours from 10 p.m. to 10 a.m., which I don't want to speak for anyone, but I think that's the more difficult of the two shifts. Other than Danny, I think I had the most difficult shift. So
I bitch about doing the 5:30 a.m. to 10 a.m. shift. That's hard. You tack another 7.5 hours on that. That's not easy.
It's another 7.5 hours on the front end,
right?
And then you have to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was great though. It actually went by a lot faster than I anticipated. It was really some of the calls. We podcasted the entire show. So if you go on the Odyssey app in the last 24 hours, or you can find it out there. Some of the best stuff in the whole 24 hours was during the overnight hours when we were really just kind of taking calls. And some of the stories that people told were incredible, just incredible. And it was an emotional roller coaster. I mean, we would go from hearing these, just incredible, inspirational, tragic stories. And then for 5 minutes, we were kind of losing our minds and quoting Big Lebowski for some reason. I can't remember how we got on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really good. And yeah, Danny, I can't give Danny enough credit. Like, he is so prepared, and we really are just there to kind of give him cues, but he's got all of this. I mean, he's so prepared. He spends the whole year basically getting this ready, and he's got all this stuff down to a T, and you just give him his cues, and he's good to go. And yeah, the 760,000.
Want to take another crack at it?
And it's gonna end up the total for the entire fundraiser by the end of the weekend. Again, as we record this on Friday, by the end of the weekend, with the Cubs doing their part on Saturday, it's gonna be well over $1 million. So
which is unbelievable.
Awesome. Yeah.
I admire Danny's energy. I admire his ambition. He does a great job with the outreach there, and it truly deserves acclaim for all the stuff that is put forth and the results that it produces. It's amazing stuff. So shout out to Danny on that. And hopefully, like you said, studs out at Wrigley on Saturday. It only continues to grow.
And if I could, I would like to leave you guys with a story, since you brought up the Family Fest Horonis Grasu thing. So this is I was there. And so this is funny. So I was still working in Bloomington at the time, and I got the opportunity to cover camp for a few days. I covered like the 2 days before, and then I was up there for Family Fest also. And I remember the Horonis Grasu thing happening, and I happened to be, and I was very much an outsider, but I introduced myself to a few people. One of them people I happened to introduce myself to that weekend was Jeff Dickerson. And I was standing maybe 5 feet from him when that injury happened. And I vividly remember Jeff just under his breath as practice ended go, unfucking believable. and by the way, just to tie the bow on this whole thing, that injury actually gave rise to Cody Whitehair. He ended up being the starting center that year. So they oddly they ended up being okay at center that year. And it was Cody Whitehair ended up having a solid career. So there you go.
If I'm not mistaken, so this is 2016, and if I'm not mistaken, the move of Cody Whitehair necessitated the trade for Josh Sitton. If not forgetting Josh right? Josh Sitton rolled in here late in the preseason. It was like all of a sudden the Bears got a new guard, and he's from Green Bay, and he's pretty good, and it didn't really amount to much by the time he left.
No. Well, I mean, that team didn't do much.
That's it. And on the other side, Cody Whitehair, good Bear. He's gonna have a good. His legacy will age very well, because there's been only so many offensive linemen for the Bears in the last 50 years or so that are really memorable. And Cody Whitehair was a good Bear. Can we agree on that at this point? And just looking back on him,
overall, and did what was asked of him a lot. I'm going to take you one more place on the Cold Tub Time Machine before we close off, and I'm going to take you back to, I guess it would be 2014. And early 2015, when Jared Allen was a Chicago Bear. And I bring that up because it is Hall of Fame weekend in Canton. Much bigger Bears presence a year ago when Devin Hester and Steve McMichael were center stage for that induction ceremony. But Jared Allen's going in. Obviously, most of his work was done with the Minnesota Vikings. He was there in Minnesota my first season on the beat in 2011 when he almost broke Michael Strahan's single-season sack record. There's a great piece of social media video that the Vikings put out of the final game when Jared Allen was attacking Josh McCown over and over and over again, trying to get to that sack record, and almost got there. And literally they took a sack away from Jared Allen like in October that would have allowed him to have the record, and it should have never been taken away from him. They recorded it as a team sack. But Jared was an absolute thrill to cover, really fun guy to be around. His time as a Bear, not all that memorable, and he got traded after they made some changes from Mark Trestman to John Fox, and he didn't fit in the Vic Fangio defense, and ultimately got traded to Carolina, I think, right? Is that where he got sent?
I don't remember. I just remember him.
He got sent somewhere.
Unfortunately, Dan, and he had a great career, but unfortunately, I just remember him being bad with the Bears.
It didn't meet the expectations when he arrived.
Yes, but he was in his prime. Even though he was with the enemy, he was a blast to watch. There's no doubt about it.
And an even bigger blast to talk to. Really fun, gregarious guy. He knew what you were after, and he knew how to entertain, and that was always fun to have those conversations at the locker with Jared.
Yep. Well, good for Jared Allen. This has been a good podcast. We covered a lot. I will be at the practice on Sunday for Family Fest. Dan and I will both be getting our time with Caleb Williams. So much to come here in the very near future on the Take the North podcast. And so for Dan Wiederer of the Chicago Tribune and of The Score, our executive producer, Adam Studzinski, I am Mark Grote saying thank you for watching and listening to the Take the North podcast.
Great talk. See you out there.